How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Well, there's some breaking news here as we come back on air. Elena Haba has decided to resign as the interim U.S. attorney in New Jersey. Courts had already said she couldn't be in that role, and she's out. There you have it. Also, the president appears he's going to announce a $12 billion aid package to farmers who are struggling. We supposedly are doing a big deal with Beijing for soybeans and the like, but tariffs have had a real impact hurting farmers in this country. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number, 877-973-7425. We need to talk about AI and regulation. We can deal with the job stuff and all that later, but let's go in the way back machine to the 1800s. You know, we need not relitigate the Civil War and slavery. Lincoln was very smart to really make slavery the overarching issue in the Civil War. It drove Britain and others away from southern states that were looking at making foreign alliances with Europeans. But the Civil War was more than about slavery. We take a very simplified view of it, but it was also about economic ideas. One of those ideas being that the fate of a railroad and the Gadsden Purchase. You know, Jefferson Davis wanted to build a southern railroad through the Gadsden Purchase, that's southern Arizona and New Mexico, and connect through Texas to San Diego, southern states. Northern railroad companies didn't want it. Then the big issue was if they did it, would the federal government pay for it, even though it was a private entity? And a lot of southern states wanted the railroad but didn't think the federal government had the power to pay for it. There were a host of economic issues. Then the Missouri Compromise and the Kansas, Nebraska Act and others get involved, and the whole thing goes kablooey, and there was just this powder keg of tensions, but a lot of it came from the issue of slavery, and there are the revisionists who try to downplay that slavery impacted all of this stuff. So yes, there was an overarching issue of slavery, but also there were a lot of economic issues and issues about federal control that played out in the lead up to the Civil War. And then you get into the Civil War and those independent-minded southern states that wanted slavery, that wanted Washington out of their lives, that felt like they signed up for a compact of the Constitution that wasn't playing out the way it was written, and things were getting haywire and wanted a reset. They actually, if you read the Confederate Constitution, it actually had way more command and control, what we would call today socialist endeavors written inside its Constitution than the federal government's Constitution for the United States did. And one of the weird things about the South was that it had odd railroad gauges. There was no standardization. It was one of the weaknesses of the South and the Confederacy is that the Union states had all largely agreed to uniform standards of railroad gauges. And in the South, Virginia in particular had different one from a number of other southern states. And you had this weird situation where you would have to unload and reload trains. Not only that, so many of the train routes in the southern states were unconnected for travel. It was all about getting crops, particularly cotton, to ports. And so you had these disjointed railroads where nothing was interconnected. The standards were different. It really made troop travel difficult in southern states, the logistics of it, because in the South, each state treated their railroads as an intrastate issue. And they did not want to connect the lines between states in such ways to involve interstate commerce regulation from Washington, among other reasons. There were more reasons, don't at me, but those were some of them. So in a lot of the union states, they had the northern railroad systems that were connected across states on a uniform gauge that interconnected with other railroad companies on a uniform gauge. It made troop travel, passenger travel, and commercial travel very easy. And southern states resisted that interconnectedness. The United States Constitution gives Congress the power to regulate interstate commerce. In the South, with suspicions about the federal government and the regulation of slavery and the like, they kept their railroads intrastate, and the federal government could not regulate them. It became an Achilles heel for Southern states' battle response in the Civil War. I bring that up because it actually relates to AI. The President of the United States has signed an executive order mandating federal regulation for AI over and above the regulation of the states. In fact, what the president is attempting to do with his executive order is to preempt state-level regulation of AI. Why does this matter? It matters because Congress has chosen not to act. In fact, there was an effort to place in the reconciliation package, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, language that would require federal standard regulation of artificial intelligence, and it got knocked out of that. Then there was an effort to put it in the National Defense Authorization Act, and it got knocked out of that. Congress itself has largely refused to preempt state regulation of interstate commerce issues related to AI. And now there's this executive order, which kind of short circuits what they're doing on Capitol Hill and probably isn't constitutional. Now, there are a lot of people who wish to claim corruption, that Donald Trump and his allies are getting a lot of campaign contributions from the AI consortiums out there. Frankly, this is the way the game is played. You build up an outside nonprofit group. They dump lots of money into Washington, D.C. They get the attention of the president and others, and they give you what you want. I will tell you, I have changed my mind on AI regulation, and I have gotten no money. In fact, I'm rather hostile to these AI entities. I actually think we're in a bubble and they're about to destroy the American economy. But I also think, having thought more about it, that federal regulation should preempt the states. Now, there are a lot of people out there who believe in a state-level regulatory response, and what I find is common among them is they think AI is very deeply destructive, and the Byzantine structure of 50 state regulatory compacts actually will slow down the development of AI, and that's good for society. What I think is that AI is here to stay, and other nations are going to harness its power before our nation harnesses its power. If every AI company has to comply with the regulations of California and New York and Illinois and Texas and Georgia and Florida and all the other states combined, it makes no sense to look at AI and say this is not interstate commerce. I in Georgia get to use ChatGPT, and you listening in California get to use ChatGPT, and you listening in Connecticut get to use ChatGPT, and we're all using the same system over the series of tubes known as the internet, which we have treated as a means of interstate commerce. Now, I saw someone earlier say, wait a second, Erickson, this is inconsistent because you're fine with state-level regulation on the access to pornography and things like that. Yes, that is true. We have always accepted morality clauses in interstate commerce. We have allowed states going back before prohibition to individually regulate things they view as moral issues. And in fact, AI would be bound to those things, whether it's age verifications for pornography and the like. But AI itself, the general framework of AI, just like the internet itself, is actually something in interstate commerce, and therefore Congress itself should get involved to allow one-size-fits-all national standard for AI. There are exceptions. Again, the morality standards have always been a recognized exception to interstate commerce, but we kind of need to have one-size-fits-all AI regulation in this country. Otherwise, the other countries in the world, all 197 of the other countries out there, are going to clean our clock when it comes to the development of this technology. Because some states are more hostile to AI than other states. California loves to regulate everything out of existence. I took the position early on that we should move slow with AI. The best way to move slow with AI is to develop state-level regulatory structures and have the AI companies comply with all 50 states' regulatory structure. That'll slow it down. That'll allow the laboratories of democracy to have a say in this and a new technology. But I've changed my mind over time on this issue. And I've changed it because I recognize AI is within interstate commerce. And according to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, the Congress regulates interstate commerce. So I think I was wrong, and I think the people who want 50-state solutions to AI are wrong. And I think that when we see how other countries, particularly China, are deploying AI, we should probably want Washington involved. But here's what's left unsaid by a lot of people. A lot of people that I have talked to behind the scenes actually kind of agree that we should have a federal regulatory framework and not an individual state framework. But they also kind of think that the Trump administration is corrupt and whoever bribes them the most is going to get what they want, and they don't want that. So they'd rather have 50 states until Trump is gone and then have a unified framework. It really comes down to the idea that a lot of people, there's a growing belief in the tech community and outside the tech community that if you just write a large check to Donald Trump, he'll give you what you want. And a lot of other people in response to that don't want Trump involved at all in the regulatory structure. So along comes the president after getting a lot of donations from AI companies, and he does an executive order that says that the federal government's going to regulate AI. I don't know that the president can do this. I don't know that he has the power by executive order to say that it is the president and the federal government that are going to regulate AI. I simply don't know that the president has that power. My guess is that he does not. But AI is coming. You're not going to stop it any more than the horseshoe manufacturer stopped the car. You're not going to stop it any more than the analog systems stopped the digital systems. And you're not going to stop it any more than the pre-internet small businesses stopped the internet. AI is coming. And I think that we as a nation need a national conversation about its implications on jobs. I got an email from a guy the other day who said his daughter lost her job at a major Fortune 100 company because the company decided that AI could do her job. And that she was among dozens of people in the company that lost their job because of AI. And the catch is that she actually has a regulatory function with this particular company that AI is not capable of doing. And no one in the C-suites that decided to save money realized that we were laying off people who are involved in a level of corporate compliance that AI can't do. And they will probably be rehired as a result, or they'll find some foreign worker to offset the regulatory compliance. I do have real problems with AI costing people jobs. As I have long said, it's overstated, I think, in many cases, but I also recognize the reality. And I just don't think we can have an individual state-by-state conversation about that. And without a national regulatory framework for AI, I think we're going to be falling behind other countries in the development of this technology. And then when it gets to this country, it's going to overwhelm us even worse. So I'm trying to keep an open mind about it. I think we're in an economic bubble. I think that AI companies are producing supply for something for which there is a demand. I think a lot of companies aren't actually seeing a return on their investment. I think some people are losing their jobs, but a lot of other people will innovate into different jobs. I think it'll wind up being very much like the internet, where it cost some people jobs, but new jobs came about and people fell back into those new jobs. I also think that our policy when it comes to AI is right now mostly being driven by fear. And I don't think fear is a healthy tool by which to regulate an up-and-coming technology. And I think the best way to get rid of the fear is to have a one-size approach from Washington, D.C. for something that is inherently within their state commerce. And so I think the president is right, but I think he's wrong in how he's gone about doing it. Hello there, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I want to tell you, just relay something to you. I've been telling you guys for several weeks now about the angst among Republicans on Capitol Hill. A lot of them feel, frankly, used and abused by the Trump administration. They're taken for granted. They don't weigh in on issues. They tell Republicans, we expect you to vote on stuff. They don't want input. And Republicans on Capitol Hill are just completely fed up with their treatment. They feel like they're supposed to matter. They're an independent branch of government, and they feel like the legislative team at the White House runs roughshod over them. A lot of them are exhausted. Puck News is reporting that as many as 20 House Republicans are preparing to announce retirements in the coming weeks. They expect to lose the House majority, and they are tired of dealing with the legislative affairs team at the White House. That's not good news. Remember, in 2022, a wave of Democrats decided to leave Congress, and that was the warning sign that doom was coming for Democrats. And Republicans, in fact, did take the House. It was close, but they took it. Republicans are now reciprocating, running for the doors, tired of dealing with Washington and exhausted by dealing with the legislative affairs team at the White House. Now, all of this is just provoking all sorts of reactions everywhere, including in the markets and the banking, financial industry, and the like. That's why Swiss America wants to help you protect your hard-earned assets from a secret war on cash, where the government tries to steer you to credit purchases so they can monitor what you're spending. This secret war on cash is an assault on your freedoms, and Swiss America wants to help you navigate it. You can get their free report by calling or texting 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash, by the way, includes digital forms of currency as the government tries to control your purchases. You can get the Secret War on Cash report completely free. You just mention Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you text my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646, or call them at 800-289-2646. Tell them Eric Erickson sent you. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. Put in your information. They'll get you the report. Takes less than 15 minutes to read. Swiss America would love to help you. The phone number one more time, 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. Hello there. Welcome. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, don't forget to text the word Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 so you can get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast. And had you done so today, you would have gotten the story. The New York Times has a big story on the Biden administration's breakdown on illegal immigration. The headline is How Biden Ignored Warnings and Lost America's Faith in Immigration. The subtitle, The Democratic President and his top advisors rejected recommendations that could have eased the border crisis that helped return Donald Trump to the White House. Now, what's so interesting here is it's largely a retrospective on how they got it wrong. Democrats publicly refusing to acknowledge they got it wrong. Behind the scenes remain very furious with the Biden administration. Christopher Flavel is the author, and the New York Times notes he interviewed more than 30 former Biden administration officials who worked on immigration and border policy, as well as members of Congress, state and local officials, lawyers, and migrants. In the weeks before Joseph R. Biden Jr. was elected president, advisors delivered a warning. His approach to immigration could prove disastrous. Mr. Biden had pledged to treat unauthorized immigrants more humanely than President Donald J. Trump, who generated widespread backlash by separating migrant children from their families. But Mr. Biden was now president-elect, and his positions threatened to drastically increase border crossings. Experts advising his transition team warned in a Zoom briefing in the final weeks of 2020, according to people with direct knowledge of the briefing. That jump, they said, could provoke a political crisis. Chaos was the word the advisors had used in a memo during the campaign. They offered a range of options to avert that crisis by better deterring migrants. Mr. Biden seemed to grasp the risk, but he and his top aides failed to act on the recommendations. The warnings came true and then some. After Mr. Biden became president, migrant encounters at the southern border quickly doubled, then kept rising. New arrivals overwhelmed border stations, then border towns, and eventually major cities like New York and Denver. Anger over illegal immigration helped return Mr. Trump to the presidency, and he has enacted even more aggressive policies than those Mr. Biden first campaigned against. Mr. Trump has drawn outrage from Democrats by sending masked agents to target migrants, often aided by National Guard soldiers. But a New York Times examination of Mr. Biden's record found that he and his closest advisors repeatedly rebuffed recommendations that could have addressed the border crisis faster and eased what became a potent issue for Mr. Trump as he sought to return to the White House and justify the aggressive tactics roiling American cities today. Former Biden administration officials told the Times Mr. Biden and his circle of close confidants, including Ron Klain, who was chief of staff during Biden's first 2 years, Mike Danilin, Jennifer O'Malley Dillon, and Anita Dunn made two crucial errors. First, they underestimated the scale of migration that was coming. Second, they failed to appreciate the political reaction to the migration, believing that stronger enforcement would alienate Latino and progressive voters, and also that a border surge would not be an important issue to most voters. Those calculations would later prove to be mistaken, with many voters, including Latinos, citing immigration as a reason to support Mr. Trump in 2024. And on and on and on and on it goes. This is an exhaustive piece by the New York Times. 3 weeks after closing the border, the president faced off against Mr. Trump in a debate at CNN's Atlanta studios. Asked why voters should trust him to solve the crisis, Mr. Biden flubbed it. What I've done since I've changed the law, what happened, said Mr. Biden, who had not changed the law. I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people crossing the border illegally. Mr. Biden went on, I'm going to continue to move until we get to total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with the Border Patrol and more asylum officers. I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence, Mr. Trump responded. I don't think he knows what he said either. Within a month, Mr. Biden left the race. The Biden experiment was over. A very different kind of experiment was just beginning. That's how they end it. This is thousands and thousands and thousands of words. It was on the front page of the New York Times yesterday, the Sunday edition. And what it boils down to is that the Biden administration listened to a bunch of highly online white people from nonprofits, people who say the word Latinx or Latinx unironically, and they failed to grasp the magnitude of the problem and the severity of the problem. And they actually believed that if they tried to solve the problem, Latino voters would be mad at them. Why? This is a very key point you understand. It is a very, very key point you need to understand to deal with present issues. The Biden team listened to a bunch of highly online white people who convinced them that if they cracked down on illegal immigration and deported a bunch of illegal immigrants, that they would be making Hispanic voters mad. And so instead, they allowed the border to be flooded and cities to be overwhelmed with illegal immigrants, and there was a backlash. Because the Biden team listened to a bunch of really out-of-touch white people who live their lives online in echo chambers of their own making. I talked about this the first hour. I wanted to spend more time on this particular issue and this particular topic of how the Biden administration got it wrong to tell you I am equally concerned with the Trump administration now doing the same thing. I got an email earlier. I don't know if Karen's still listening. She's a regular listener down in Florida. She says, I agree in deporting everyone living here illegally. Let's talk after removing the criminals never occurs. Because people are getting away with breaking our laws. How many years are enough for someone to get away with it? Where are the consequences? How about if they're on welfare and been here illegally 30 years? I don't want to support them. Do you? This is the reason we have such a massive Hispanic influence in our elections. Are they Hispanic or are they Americans? I'm sure you know that in parts of Miami, people can be born, live, and die without ever learning to speak English. Yeah, I think that's a problem. Spent a lot of time on assimilation today. Here's my concern. She's right. We never have the conversation about what to do after. But also, if you are a highly online white person on the right, you tend to lose the ability to distinguish. And I'm not saying Karen is, by the way, but I am saying the Trump administration is listening to a group of highly online white people who really can't nuance between the gangbangers and the grandmother. Let me stake out my position for you, so there's no nuance here for you. There's no confusion here. I do not think a person who came to the United States of America illegally should ever be granted American citizenship. I do not believe that anyone, no matter how long they have lived here, who came here illegally should be rewarded with American citizenship. I don't think they should. Now, I think that if you were carried here by your parents when you're 2 or 3 years old, and this is the only country you know, that we should not pack you up and send you home to a country you don't know. I think the President of the United States has secured the border of the United States, and we have 0 illegal alien crossings that we know about. I think the President's team should prioritize rounding up the people who've come here under the Biden administration. Let's ignore the grandmothers who've been here for 30 years. Let's ignore for a moment the kids who have been here. They're now 20 and 30-somethings. They're illegal aliens. They've lived here their whole lives. They don't know any other country. Let's ignore them for a moment. We know that when the people came across the border from the Biden administration, they were documented and released into the country. Because we know they came here illegally, were documented by the Biden administration, released, we know who they are, and we can say, you got to go home. We're going to start with the gangbangers. We're going to start with the criminals, and then we're coming from the people who came here 2 years ago illegally. They're still in the country. Biden team processed them and said, stay here. Those are the people we go first. We find them and we deport them. What then do we do with the people who came here during the first Trump administration, the Obama tenure, the Bush tenure, the Clinton tenure, the other Bush tenure, the Reagan tenure? What do we do with them? Here's my solution. If they have not broken the law, pause, because you're yelling right now. They crossed the border illegally, breaking the law, and they came here, and ever since, they haven't broken the law. They haven't taken they haven't been on the public dole. They found a job. They've worked peacefully, keeping to themselves and their own community. What do we do with those people? Because they exist, and you know they exist. That's the problem that Hispanic voters have right now. This is why the Biden administration swung wildly to the left and alienated Hispanic voters who are legal American citizens who vote. The reason, and I would disagree with Karen, the reason she says we're having Hispanic influence on our election, we're having a Hispanic influence on our election because we have a massive pool of Hispanic voters in the country, and they happen to be Hispanic. They're Americans, but they're of Hispanic origin, and they don't like illegal immigration. But what they also don't like is the cruelty in the process where someone has lived here for 30 years, has not broken the law since they illegally crossed the border, no other law breaking, and we're gonna find that grandmother and send her back to some country she hasn't been to in 30 years before we get rid of all the gangbangers, the criminals, and the people who came here during the Biden administration. I want to be really clear here. You can disagree with this. I don't care. I'm trying to explain to you, though, that a lot of Hispanic voters in this country, they are of Hispanic origins, they are Americans, they don't want illegal aliens here, but they also think it's really cruel to go round up the grandmother who's been here for 30 years before you get the gangbangers and the people who came here 2 years ago. What I'm trying to tell you is that the Trump administration has gone so far, the hyper online right, they've overplayed their hand in the way the Biden administration did. You have two groups of political classes in Washington, D.C. who can't nuance the issue because they're driven to the extremes of round them all up and throw them all away. Or don't round any of them up and throw any of them away. As opposed to find the people who came here during the Biden administration, all of them, criminal or not, get rid of them. Find the people who are the criminals and the gangbangers, get rid of them. And once you've gotten all of those people out of the country, then you say, okay, you've been here your whole life, at least a lot of it, 30 years. We're going to, now that we've secured the border and nobody's getting in, have a rational conversation. You've been here for 30 years. You've proven you want to stay and you're not going to break the law now that you're here. So stay. Just wait. Just listen to me. Stay. But neither you nor your children who came here with you will ever be citizens of the United States. You can stop looking over your back now, but don't you ever attempt to apply for citizenship. Here's your resident alien card. It's got a mark on it to let them know you can never apply for citizenship. They've been here for 30 years. They've contributed to their community. They haven't broken the law since they've been here. Now, I don't know if people are ready for that. I don't know that people can handle that. But I'm telling you that where the Republican position is right now is as extremist to a lot of voters as the Biden position, and not just to Hispanic voters. When you're rounding up the grandmothers and the grandfathers who've been here 30 years ahead of the people who came here 2 years ago, who were documented to have come here from the Biden administration, and the gangbangers and the criminals, you're provoking a voter reaction. And this is my bottom line for all of you, whether you agree with me or not on this. You alone can't preserve your coalition. So you need to decide for yourself what you're comfortable with preserving your coalition for power. And if you're not comfortable with the idea I've articulated, you need to come up with another idea. Because I can tell you that your idea of round every single person up and deport every single person, no matter how long they've been here, no matter what they've done or not done in this country since they've been here, is a political loser for the coalition you need to keep in power. So go build a different coalition if you want. The Biden administration killed their coalition by taking the wackadoo view of let everybody in, no distinctions, no nuance, and we don't care what their criminal background is, we're going to let them in. And that provoked a voter backlash among white voters and non-white voters. But you, on the Trump side, are equally provoking a backlash by not being able to distinguish between the recent arrivals and the long ago arrivals. Now, you can tell me you don't care, you want them all to go, and that's fine. That's a perfectly valid position. I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just trying to tell you that if you do that position, you need to be able to replace a coalition of people you just brought to your side in order to maintain power. Now, who are you going to replace those people with? The white wokes who are Democrats? The suburban white rich people who've decided to vote Democrat and don't care about transition? Who are you going to replace these people with? Because they are conservative, Christian, Hispanic voters who agree with you on everything. They just think maybe we shouldn't deport the people who've been here for 30, 40 years. We should deport the people who came here yesterday. You need to figure out how to replace that coalition of people, because there's overwhelming amounts of data you're going to lose them, including potentially in Miami, Florida tomorrow in a mayoral election where the Democrats haven't won a mayoral election in over 30 years, and they just might tomorrow because of this very issue and how the Trump administration's handling it. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson. Delighted to have you with me. Let's see. Tom, I want to come to you real quick here before we're out of time. Or Tim, I'm sorry. Tim, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for taking my call. I'm going to try and talk quick. So I agree with everything you're saying about people who came here illegally but have been here for a long time. We should not worry about them just yet. But my question is, if they are granted some type of legal status or a Social Security number, I, as an American citizen, have to pay into Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security, and I expect that when I come to 65 that it's going to be there for me. What about the illegals who have permanent status? Are they going to be granted Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security?
I don't think they should unless they can show they've paid into the system. A lot of them actually do get a quote-unquote Social Security number, taxpayer ID number. But if they haven't and they haven't paid into it, they shouldn't get it. That's my view. Now, my view is that you should go to visioncomputers.com today or call them at 404-COMPUTE and let them build a new computer for you or for someone you love for Christmas present, or if you need managed IT, they can save you. So if you've got a kid who's in the gig economy, for example, they're working on their laptop all day and they can't afford any downtime to make ends meet, you can get them a managed IT account with Vision Computers, so they always have someone on call that they can call if there's ever a problem with their existing computer. You call Vision Computer at 404-COMPUTE. It's $199 a year for the service per computer. And you can get it for your kid who's in the gig economy and needs their computer working all the time, and Vision can be their call. So 15 seconds or less, they get an answer to help them with their computers. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Let Vision Computers be your IT service and build computers for you.